Hi, this is Len Furman, the Sports Time Traveler, and today's episode is titled JFK Would Have Been There, the 1964 Cotton Bowl. The subheading reads, JFK planned to return to Dallas 6 weeks after his 11/22/63 visit to see his beloved number 2 Navy battle number 1 Texas. We start with an introduction from the Sports Time Traveler. As a sports time traveler, I'm not a sports historian. I'm merely trying to experience the excitement of sporting events from the past. Some of the events I travel to are ones I'm reliving, such as the 1973 Mets, which I followed when I was a 9-year-old kid. But many of the events are ones I've never known anything about, and so I'm trying to experience them for the first time. This was the case for the Navy football team of 1963, which was well before my time. I knew nothing about this team. In fact, I wouldn't have even thought about following the 1963 Navy team if not for my friend the Giffer, who was a graduate of the Naval Academy in 1985 and encouraged me to follow this team whose legacy had been a great inspiration for him growing up and was a factor in his determination to gain acceptance to the Naval Academy. Along the way on this journey through the fall of 1963, I learned of the great affinity President Kennedy had for Navy football. Kennedy had served in the Navy in World War II and was a Navy war hero. As the president-elect in January 1961, Kennedy attended the Orange Bowl to root for number 4 Navy as they played number 5 Missouri. And of course, Kennedy attended the 1961 and 1962 Army-Navy games while he was president. As commander-in-chief, he had to split his time during the game, so he sat on the Army side in the first half and the Navy side in the second half. That way he could be there when his beloved Navy won the game. Several weeks ago, I wrote an article about the 1963 Army-Navy game, which JFK had planned to attend a week after his trip to Dallas. You can view that article in the written version of my Substack article. Everyone who followed college football in 1963 knew that if Navy beat Army, they were going to retain their number 2 ranking and be invited to the Cotton Bowl to play number 1 Texas. It would be a de facto national championship game. In fact, it would be just the second time that the number 1 and number 2 ranked college football teams had met in a bowl game. JFK certainly knew this. In fact, on November 22, 1963, Kennedy was scheduled to go to Austin after his event in Dallas, to which the fateful open-air motorcade was headed. His agenda in Austin included a visit to watch the University of Texas football team practice. But of course, JFK never made it to see the Texas football team practice. His life was cut short at age 46 that afternoon in Dallas. 2 weeks later, after the game had been postponed a week, Navy did beat Army on December 7, 1963, and that set up the big game at the Cotton Bowl. As I experienced these events in my sports time travels, it then occurred to me that if JFK would have lived, he would have attended the 1964 Cotton Bowl game. He would have gone back to Dallas just 6 weeks later to have the greatest experience he had ever had as a football fan. To support my hypothesis that JFK would have attended the 1964 Cotton Bowl game, I consulted an expert on the subject. Michael Connolly is the author of a book titled The President's Team, the 1963 Army-Navy Game and the Assassination of JFK. Michael indicated to me that, quote, I think he would definitely go, especially with the rivalry he had with Lyndon Johnson. Vice President Johnson was from Texas. Further evidence that JFK would have attended the 1964 Cotton Bowl game comes from an article I found in the Banner Press on October 26, 2017, that indicated the speech JFK was prepared to make in Dallas when he arrived at the Trade Mart included this joke, quote, "I like the idea of the Navy-Texas game, personally, and I'd like to do what I can to help, except that I know how you folks feel about federal intervention." So it's pretty much a certainty. JFK would have attended the 1964 Cotton Bowl game to root for Navy. What greater moment could there have been for a Navy football fan? Navy had never won a national championship, and this was a grand opportunity. As I pondered this, I felt a deep-rooted sadness that JFK didn't get to see the 1964 Cotton Bowl game. This sadness was pervasive during my entire experience back in time to the 1964 Cotton Bowl game. And now, the article on the game. The 1964 Cotton Bowl, Dallas, Texas, January 2, 1964. I'm here virtually in Dallas, where yesterday number 1 Texas met number 2 Navy in the Cotton Bowl game. This is only the second time in the history of college football up to this time that the number 1 and number 2 teams have met in a postseason bowl game. This one was set up to be a real classic. Texas, 10-0, featured a great defense, which had not given up more than 13 points in a game and allowed an average of just 6.5. Navy, 9-1, had a great offense. They had scored at least 21 points in every game and were averaging 31.4. This game was a chance for Navy to avenge their only loss of the season, which happened right here in the Cotton Bowl Stadium on October 11th, when SMU upset them 32-28. Navy only lost when their Heisman Trophy quarterback Roger Staubach fired a pass into the end zone on the final play of the game, which was juggled and dropped by Navy wide receiver Ed Orr. It was also in this same stadium that Texas barely maintained their undefeated record in the last game of the season on November 28th by staging a dramatic fourth-quarter comeback from a 13-3 deficit to beat Texas A&M 15-13. A capacity crowd of 75,504 fans filled the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day 1964, and millions more watched on the CBS television network when the broadcast started at 12:45 p.m. Central Time. You can experience the game as I did by watching the video that I have posted in the written version of the Substack article. Here's my recap of the game with the timestamp of the videotape noted for easy viewing. 2 minutes and 6 seconds on the tape. Texas struck first in the opening quarter when Duke Carlisle completed a pass to Phil Harris for a 58-yard touchdown catch and run. At 4:42, watch Roger the Dodger. He can't escape the Texas blitz and is thrown for nearly a 25-yard loss. At 6:25 on the tape, Navy avoids going down by 10 in the first quarter when Texas botches a fake field goal attempt. At 6:55, Navy can't take advantage of that opportunity as Staubach is intercepted. At 8:51 on the tape, Texas scores on a 63-yard catch and run from Carlisle to Harris again. Texas now leads 14-0 in the second quarter. At 11:39, Carlisle scores the third Texas touchdown on a 10-yard run in the second quarter. Watch from 12:55 to 13:50 on the tape. The brilliance of Heisman Trophy winner Roger Staubach is best on display in this game in a 55-second sequence here on the tape, in which he scrambles twice out of trouble and has 3 straight completed passes. But Navy can't cross the goal line in the first half. And it's 21-0 at halftime. At 22:57 on the tape, watch in the fourth quarter as Staubach runs it in for Navy's only score of the game. Texas had run up the score to 28-0 before Staubach's touchdown made the final score 28-6 Texas. It was an unanticipated rout. The 2 long first-half bombs had given Texas an insurmountable edge in the game. It was a shock to Navy, since Texas wasn't known for their passing game. Allison Danzig, who covered the game for the New York Times, wrote, "The Longhorns have been primarily a running team that ground out yardage and first downs. Today, they passed as never before." Texas may have altered their strategy with the knowledge that Navy's defensive back Pat Connolly was playing with a hamstring injury. On both of the touchdown passes in the first half, Carlisle threw in Connolly's direction, as Connolly was trying to cover Harris. Connolly, however, was quick to dismiss his injury as an excuse, telling Alan Goldstein of the Baltimore Sun, "My leg was a little tight. It didn't bother me that much." But Goldstein noted in his article that in the locker room after the game, Donnelly paused as he cut away the tape around his injured leg muscle. As a result of the surprise aerial attack, by the third quarter, Duke Carlisle had passed for 213 yards for a new Cotton Bowl record. Texas was also able to blockade Navy's running game. This was partly due to the limited effectiveness of Pat Donnelly, who was also Navy's top rusher on the season. Navy rushed for a total of minus 14 yards in the game, and they never rushed for a first down. Roger Staubach was constantly bombarded in the backfield. He told Goldstein in the Baltimore Sun, "I just got knocked on my butt, and that's all there is to it. I thought I could run, but I've never been hit so hard." Staubach credited the Texas defense with, quote, "the greatest pursuit I've seen." Texas shut down Roger from running and scrambling, but they couldn't shut off Staubach's passing game. He completed 21 of 31 passes, and by the end of the game, he surpassed Carlisle's short-lived Cotton Bowl record by amassing a total of 228 yards in the air. 9 of Staubach's completes went to Ed Orr, who in a way avenged his missed catch in the SMU game by setting a Cotton Bowl record for receptions. But without an effective ground attack, Navy was only able to cross the goal line once all afternoon. Postscript. Texas left no doubt as to which team was the national champion of college football. The Cotton Bowl game of 1964 cemented the first ever national title for Texas. But who knows what might have transpired if JFK had lived? Author Michael Connolly knows the 1963 Navy team as well as anyone. In addition to writing the book about them, he has been adopted as an honorary teammate. By the way, that's an honor, Connolly informed me, that has also been granted to Hall of Fame coach Bill Belichick. Bill's father, Steve, was an assistant coach at Navy from 1956 to 1989. Connolly asserts that the assassination took a lot out of the Navy team. Perhaps, if Kennedy had lived and attended the game, Navy would have had the extra adrenaline to withstand the Texas defensive pressure and shut down the Longhorns' surprise long passing game. If Kennedy had lived, just maybe, Navy could have won a national championship in front of their commander-in-chief. Just maybe, instead of the date 11/22/63 being forever blasted into the American psyche as one of our most tragic dates, JFK himself would have remembered 1/1/64 as his greatest personal moment when Navy was number one. Sadly, we'll never know. Additional reading on the 1963 Navy team and JFK. For anyone who is inspired to learn more about the 1963 Navy team and the association with JFK, I strongly suggest you check out the great book by Michael Connolly, which you can find at the link I have provided in the Substack written version of the article. You can look at it by just simply going to Amazon and searching on the 1963 Navy team and JFK. Additional news from 1964. The Sports Time Traveler is keeping an eye on two emerging stories in early 1964. The first one is Bob Hayes. Yesterday in Miami, Bob Hayes unofficially tied the world record for the 100-yard dash with a time of 9.1 seconds at the Orange Bowl track meet on New Year's Day. That equals the time of Hayes' pending world record. The time was unofficial because of a 10-mile-per-hour aiding wind. But what was most impressive is that Hayes did it yesterday on a waterlogged cinder track. Hayes is America's best hope in the sprinting events at the upcoming 1964 Tokyo Olympics in October. The sports time traveler intends to make the trip to Japan virtually to cover the games for you. And the second story is the Beatles. This is not exactly a sports story, but it has all the excitement of sports and more. A syndicated article from London appeared this morning in some American newspapers. The article was written by Hollywood gossip writer Erskine Johnson, and it was titled, quote, "Warning to United States, Beatles on the way," end quote. It appeared, the version I saw appeared in the Public Opinion newspaper in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Johnson wrote the following: "I watch, I'm appalled. The four young men on the stage call themselves the Beatles. With shouts of, oh yeah, 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 they wiggle like eels. The Beatles are England's #1 recording stars of beat music. It's like Elvis Presley all over again, only louder. The Beatles don't even look human because of long, monstrous, shaggy haircuts. Their names are Ringo, Paul, George, and John, and they are making a fortune. In February, they will invade the United States with 2 appearances on Ed Sullivan's television show. The sports time traveler plans to be there." That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye now.